Hi everybody, Pen here with Yogacises. I have Kara Thorsen here. I met her on a Facebook group and we connected and I figured, you know what, I want to have her on my podcast and I'm really excited to have her on. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here
Thank
today.
you for having me. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So just share with us where you're from and how your yoga journey began.
Okay, well, I'm Kara Thorsen, and I have a studio, Yoga Equanimity. I'm in Montreal now, but I grew up in upstate New York, and I was living in Manhattan. My yoga journey began, well, at 14. I believe I was 14. I was diagnosed with a scoliosis that could have been moving into a surgery. My mother resisted the surgery, which, thank God, she was always resistant on invasive approaches. No x-rays for dentals, no, so always a no for interventions of that nature. So it had always been on my mind, and I guess I was 22 when for whatever reason, and I don't know if it was instinctual or if something told me that yoga was going to help, but I started knowing the word yoga and then knowing what that happened. That was in 1992, or knowing that yoga could do something. And so I began practicing yoga in 1992 with the goal of just figuring out my body, the physical and the mental counterparts to that. I kind of always do things, I'm autodidactic, and so I kind of do things backwards in the sense that I began yoga with a home practice before I started taking classes. So I think there was a good 10 years where I was just practicing at home. And or maybe 7 years practicing at home before I found a teacher. And so then I started practicing, or I found my first Iyengar class. And from there on, I was like, there's nothing else that I want to do with my life. So whatever I have to do in that meantime before I become an Iyengar teacher will all be with the goal to become an Iyengar teacher. So here we are now, 25 some years later. And yes, I am an Iyengar teacher and teach Iyengar yoga, and am completely in love with what I do.
Oh wow, that's great.
Scoliosis it's non-detectable. At this point, it's non-detectable.
That's awesome. I had scoliosis too. And my mom helped me with, she does acupuncture, so she helped me with that, but also yoga helped a lot too. So I can totally.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I'm not super familiar with that, but I know that many different mediums can work. It's how we work to make the changes happen. So fantastic.
And now I don't have back aches or back pains because of the yoga and practices and everything. Oh, sorry. For, you said home practice, and as we're talking, I'm working on this, how to help people just be able to squeeze in the time to do a home practice, because it's the whole mindset thing, right? Sometimes people will be like, okay, I don't have time to do even a few minutes of that. How do you help people that want to do a home practice, or how did you continue to maintain that daily practice of yoga at home?
For me, it was just, that's just the way it was. But, not everybody is going to do that. I mean, this is what I wanted in my life, so obviously I dove in. But, I struggle with that as well. And the Iyengar discipline, come on, my cat is like all over everything. Stop, leave us alone. So in the Iyengar discipline, it's really, compulsory for us to have a practice. And very often I find it's fine for us because we're teachers. We should have a practice. It's fraudulent to not have a practice and be teaching. But for the people that come to us, to actually require them to have a 2-hour practice a day, it may not be feasible and may actually do more damage to them than less. So for me, I'm a big believer in with Iyengar yoga, it's really a lifestyle. And it's a life skill. So once you start learning the practice and learning about your body, I believe that just happens naturally. All of a sudden you're doing the dishes and you'll be curious about how your feet are towards the floor, or how you're standing, or how your pelvis is placed. And that is your home practice. And little by little, something will happen. You know, maybe you'll go into Uttanasana or practice Tadasana while you're cooking, or, you know, play with a pose with the kitchen table and the chairs. And I believe that that's so much more important. If you bring that richness into one asana, let that be your home practice. You know, rather than stressing yourself out that you have to do a complete A to Z practice and then actually be not want to do it anymore because it's just another obligation that we can't take on. Let it be natural, let it be organic. And I think that every single person that comes to practice here, I believe they're all practicing at home, whether it's that 2 hours a day, and some of them probably do, or whether it's 5 minutes a day. It's in their thought process. It's in how they behave in the exterior world. So it is the yamas and niyamas. And that's my concern, is globally how we behave with one another. So.
For Iyengar, so how do you explain to people that have never practiced Iyengar before, and how do you explain this?
Well, first I tell them it's an experience. So it's much better if you come in and have the experience. But I would say, you know, for me, Iyengar yoga is really, it's the base of how we can bring our best self to the table. The requirements may seem like they're higher than another yoga studio, but it's not an activity. And yoga at its base was never an activity. It was always a discipline. And so for us to kind of put our westernized spin on it to make it convenient for everybody has really dismissed the benefits of it. At its base, yoga is a therapy, and it is a therapy to essentially dismiss, if we have, or abate mental illness. So the body is the capital for what's going on in here. So for us to, you know, just make it easy for people has really taken away from the beauty of the discipline in and of itself. And so I just say, you know, it's an experience, but the practice is a discipline, and you're going to get into your body and you're going to get into your mind, and then you're going to see if you like it. But I really believe giving people the option is the best bet. You know, people need to have control. So you come in, you have the experience, you like it, perfect. And if you don't like it, you're under no obligation. I'm not going to chase you to come back or try and convince you. And so it's people's choice. But how would I describe it? I don't, you know, come and have the experience. And look at me. This is the best description I can give you. Does that help? Good answer? No? Yes?
Great answer. For Iyengar, what are the 3 to 5 tips that you will give for people who are just starting, who are new to this practice?
Be compassionate with yourself. You know, take it seriously, but take it just seriously enough. There's always that borderline. And be humble, because the practice is bigger than us. Whenever we go into something that's really big, we tend to want to make that perfect or beat it or master it somehow. And just let it be what it is. See what it can give you. Be receptive to the gifts that it has versus thinking about what it needs to do for you. And it's a switch that should happen naturally, because of course everyone comes to the practice with a different need or a different goal, or maybe even nothing, and then they're surprised by what it brings. Or when they come with a specific goal, they may get disappointed because they haven't met their goal or what have you. So manage your expectations and just let the practice be. Let the practice be.
Okay. So what is the time that you recommend people do yoga? Like, is there a specific time, or whenever they can, or?
I would say whenever you can. But if you're a person that likes to have a schedule, a creature of habit like myself, well then, you know, for many years my practice was in the morning before I did everything. And then I had my daughter, and then it was whenever she would take a nap. And now she's 15. And so it's usually in the afternoon. I can manage it. I'm older. My body is changing. Things have gotten different. So my stamina is different, and my endurance level has changed. So I move things around. But, if you want to take 15 minutes during your lunch break, that's perfect. If you want to do it before you go to bed so that you have a better sleep, that's perfect. But it's kind of, is there really an ideal time in this world? If you want to set aside a time, then okay, change your schedule and adapt your schedule around it. But I would say whenever is the ideal time, whenever the spirit moves you, then that's the time for your practice.
Okay. You say you teach at yoga studios, right?
I teach at my yoga studio. And then I work with other communities in Tadoussac, in Percé, in upstate New York, and a couple of other places.
Okay, so who would go to your yoga classes, like in terms of the population, age group, or
I have people that are 23. I have people that are 77. Some people, the business model now, I find the business model actually to be very predatory. I don't find it very authentic at all. With all these 200-hour teacher training programs, they're selling yoga as something that's easy, but to face ourselves is never easy. It's not an easy task. So, I don't have an age bracket 18 to 23 that I'm zeroing in on. I'm not looking to create smokers. I'm looking to empower people. And so for me, whoever wants to come and feel better in their skin, that's who I want to come. But I want people to be proactive in their lives. I don't necessarily have, I'm loaded with compassion, but I have to see you put in an effort. And so if I don't feel that I can help you because you're resistant to the help, then okay, we can try again. But we have to be approachable. I have to be receptive to people's psychologies and be compassionate to their psychologies and their potentials. But they also have to be compassionate to the fact that I'm coming in here knowing what this can offer you, and you got to meet me somewhere. So the people that are ready to be proactive in life are the people that I want to be with. We need lots of change right now, and we have lots of change coming at us. And if we're going to meet that resistance with equanimity, then we have to find a practice that makes us suitable.
So for your classes, how do you do you prepare? Are you prepared with a theme, or are you just ask students what are your needs, what do you want to focus on, and they go from there?
Great question. In the Iyengar method, we work in a monthly basis, and everything leads towards pranayama, which is the breath work. So it's standing poses, then it's forward folds and back bends. Everything moves us towards the greater or the more subtle being of pranayama. Because I teach in small studios or in my small space, I usually kind of just know that, okay, we're in the first week of the month, so it's going to be standing poses and we need to crack the body, we need to work. But I see how people are feeling, and maybe we have to switch the way we're working. Maybe one week it's dynamic, or with one class it's very dynamic, with other people it's very static work. It really depends. Maybe sometimes we'll use a lot of props. So the theme is there, but within that theme are the variables to it. And with Iyengar yoga, in the beginning, for the first couple of years, and I still do this, but I kind of vary, because of the way I teach, it's very particular in the group and the sizes that we have, so we can really get into the nitty gritty. But in the method, the standing poses are the beginning, because standing poses are the attack on our habitual patterns. And so they show us how we're using our body. And then from that initial breaking of those initial habits, then we can move forward into safer full range practices, and also observing ourselves in that. If we put beginners, some people are very flexible or very mobile, and so they can go into full range poses immediately, but it doesn't mean that their body is prepared for it. It may mean that their body is just very open. And so we're actually doing more damage than not. And flexibility, exhibitionism, is also very egotistical. So we have to look into that and then try and harness them some way without being critical, but letting them understand their body and their patterns on a different way. So there's a lot of psychology in yoga that people underestimate. So I'm glad I have a background in that. but there's a lot of, and I would say actually my background is much less formidable than actually watching people use their bodies and the experience that teaching has brought for that.
Okay. So let's see. In terms of like the timing, the duration of your classes, how long are they usually?
2 hours.
2 hours, right? You did mention that. Okay.
Everybody is like, oh my God, Karen, 1.5 hours was okay, but it wasn't sufficient. We wanted that extra half hour to really take the time to open the body, work the body, close the body. And if there's dialogue that needs to happen, now we've got the time for that too.
Okay. And do you recommend your students to do journaling and stuff like that and writing their experiences down?
Such great questions. I'm a big journaler, so yes, because I know how it's helped me. It really depends on the person. When I work privately with people, and it's more of a, depending on what they're coming in for, but one case particularly, she's coming in with gobs of anxiety and a whole bunch of, a packed suitcase full of childhood and young adult and blah, blah, blah. And so for her, the first thing that I mentioned to her was get a journal. And she said, what am I going to put in the journal? And I was like, the guts. That journal is for you to put down whatever you're thinking and feeling, because that's how you're going to be able to do the psychoanalysis. You're going to be able to see what you've written. And that's how we're going to find what the crux of the problem is, because a Band-Aid solution, you've been using a Band-Aid solution for 30 years, and where has it gotten you? So now we got to get in there. And so what's going in the journal is going to be the guts. And then once we're done spilling our guts, now we've got the data to start making the cure. So yeah, journaling I think is a great part of it.
Besides the teaching of yoga and the physical aspect and the mental aspect, do you also focus on nutrition as well?
I try not to be too invasive in people's personal choices. So I kind of already assume if they're here, they have a balance in their lifestyle. I have people that come, one of my long-term students, he's a beer brewer. And he is fastidious in his work, but he's also a drinker. He's also, so I think balance is the main requirement. If you find that anything is taking over more in your lifestyle, if you find, okay, I'm eating way too much sugar and I can't move my body anymore, then okay, then it's time to make some different choices. But I don't make any nutritional classes. But I think it's interesting, and I do have nutritionists that come to class. And, if there's anybody that's questioning something, then certainly they're the source, the expert that I would put to the table before myself. But it all goes together for sure. So that's a great question. It all goes together. But since I'm not an expert, I just assume that everyone has a balanced lifestyle, or we're balancing it here.
And of course, if they're not balanced, then you could feel it physically, and of course, they'll come to your yoga class and get that.
Yeah. And I think that kind of the practice can be the impetus to curbing our lesser habits. And naturally, we make all these expectations for ourselves, and it's hard. The world expects so much of us, and then we have all these mismanaged expectations of what we can actually achieve. So we become controlling over the things we have no control over. But in fact, we have a whole lot of power. we have a whole lot of power to make different choices, but the different choices that we can make, we're afraid to make because it's so much easier to call out than call in. And so my personal goal isn't to affirm, but to empower. And hopefully that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you. This is random, but I saw your cat. How many cats do you have?
One, but she's like 100. She's a very big cat. Not super big, but very.
You know how every time I don't have pets here, but when I used to live with my family, they have pets, and I've noticed they're very intuitive. Like if you do yoga, if you're spiritual, then they can really sense it. How has that, like, with your practice, and how is your practice affecting your cat?
Not so positively. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's interesting. When I first started practicing, I had a Siberian Husky. And I'll tell you, everything I learned about philosophy was from that dog. But every morning I would get up, and I usually got up between 5:30 and 6 because it was the time of my life where I was practicing before I would go to work. And so I would get up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And usually by about 7:30, Sev would get out of bed and he would come and lay right on my mat. I'd be like, well, I guess practice is over because now with a 100-pound dog on my mat, what am I going to do? So then when Sev passed away, I got pregnant with my daughter, and I didn't have another pet for about, I think my daughter was 7 years old when we got Lily. And Lily, she used to come into my room, into the yoga room, and sit on the little table that we had in the corner for every practice that I did and every class that I taught. She would sit right on that table and just watch. And now I find pretty much every practice that I do, she ends up in the room. It depends on what time of day it is because we have sunbeams that come into the room. So she chases the sunbeams in her sleep and her little napping, or she lays on my stuff and does. But yes, she's always present. And I think they enjoy that energy. I mean, so many of our asanas are actually animal poses or, and shapes. And animals are very shape-oriented, and I think it just opens the channels for communication. So she just comes in, and so it affects her, yeah. And she, what her thing is though, always shavasana at the end of classes. Shavasana. She wakes up from her nap because she's been exhausted from her day of sleeping. And then she comes in and everybody's sleeping. Laying down. So she can walk through everybody and kind of rub up on everybody, but they're resting. So she gets all the love she needs. And yeah, she's an interesting cat.
It's adorable. I don't know anything else.
Okay, good.
Oh my God. Can't think of any more questions. So how do people contact you, like your website? And
yeah, through the website. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram account. Word of mouth. I can send you the link to the website, and you can look at that if you want to, and share that out with the iPod or the podcast. I'm sorry, if you want to, and the Instagram account and such as that.
Okay.
But yeah, really, that's how we're found, and yeah.
I will, once I get once I upload everything, I'll also, in the description, I'll list all the ways that people can reach out to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was great. Anytime. And I'll put you in touch with a few of my friends that I think they would enjoy speaking with you as well.
All right, great.
For us, all of our favorite subject is yoga, and everything is always sourced back to yoga. So, so I can put you in touch with a few other people, and I think that you'd have great conversations with them.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pan. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Enjoy your day.
You too.
Okay. Bye.